Part 43. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wu Nian. Chapter 421. Massacre. Boom. Boom. It was accompanied by a crackling sound. Scorching flames appear within the Data civilization. Data civilization is still stuck in the Middle Ages. Facing the Zerg civilization, whose technological civilization power far exceeds its own. The entire Data civilization is plunged into death and fire. The building was bombarded with long-range weapons. Those buildings are now in ruins. Ah! These bloody bastards! I'll fight you! Ah! My legs! My hand! Fire, fire! It's on fire! Curses, roars, and screams rang out. Emotions such as death and despair are spreading in this Data civilization. The scorching flame temperature permeated the entire Data civilization, and the sky was illuminated by the flames. The air was filled with the smell of burnt, bloody, and roasted meat. TNC stood on the street, staring blankly at the street in front of him, his face as pale as paper. There were corpses lying on the street. Only the remains of severed limbs were left, and some were burnt. Why? How could this happen? They are just ordinary people. They are alive. They are just living. They have not done any bad things or harmed anyone. Why do they have to suffer such pain? Should they suffer such death? Why? Why? Zerg civilization invades other civilizations without a reason. It's just that the Zerg civilization needs food and resources, that's all. Currently, the 7 major civilizations have the ability to create their own planets. The Zerg civilization can also create planets inhabited by the Zerg civilization through its own abilities. But the reproductive ability of the Zerg is too powerful. Therefore, after the Zerg civilization spread to all corners of the universe, various other new Zerg civilizations have long since split within the Zerg civilization. Although those Zerg civilizations are still under Rena's jurisdiction, they all have their own leaders and will invade according to their own needs. Compared with creating planets by yourself, it is obviously much easier to plunder and occupy them, and you don't need to consume resources yourself. A strong civilization plunders a weak civilization. Why plunder? All I can say is that sometimes, being weak is the original sin. If you are weak, you will be plundered and slaughtered. This is the rule between civilizations. Whether it is between civilizations within a planet or between planetary civilizations within the universe. However, TNC was born in the Data civilization. The current Data civilization is only a medieval civilization, and it does not even know that the planet is round. TNC cannot understand the invasion and massacre of foreign civilizations. Other side. Chen Mu noticed a scene. In the room. A humanoid Zerg warrior entered the room and looked at the room in front of it. In this room, there are countless large wooden barrels used to hold wine. Inside one of the barrels, a woman was holding a little girl, curled up, hiding in a large wooden barrel. She heard the noise outside and turned pale. "Mom, this is a little girl." The little girl looked at the woman and said innocently, "Where is Daddy?" As soon as the little girl said these words, the woman's face turned pale. She quickly covered the little girl's mouth with her hand and shook her head at the little girl. The little girl was stunned, looking at the woman's pale face. She blinked her big eyes. Suddenly, a big metal hand reached out from above the barrel and grabbed the woman's shoulder. The woman was stunned and turned pale. The big metal hand pulled the woman upward. "Mom." The little girl was about to say something. Crack. The woman slapped the little girl, her eyes filled with tears, and she shook her head violently at the little girl. The little girl was stunned, her big eyes filled with tears, but she didn't dare to speak. The humanoid Zerg grabbed the woman out of the barrel and threw her on the ground. The woman struggled to get up. She raised her face and looked at the humanoid creature made of black metal in front of her. Her face turned pale. "No, no." She stood up in panic and wanted to run. The creature raised its big hand and violently grasped the woman's head. No. Bang, the woman's head shattered. Blood splattered everywhere. The humanoid Zerg raised his hand and took off the helmet on his head, revealing a head. This head is the big head of an insect, with two vestigial pincers in its mouth. In the middle of the pincers is a mouth filled with jagged teeth. It sat down, picked up the food, put it in its mouth and started eating. The barrel has gaps. The little girl looked at the scene in front of her through the gap. She covered her mouth with her little hands, but her eyes were full of tears and her little body was trembling slightly. She slowly squatted down, crouched in the corner, curled up, hugged her knees with her hands, lowered her head, and choked silently. She knew she couldn't cry. Otherwise, it's over. The guy just didn't see her, and her mother sacrificed herself to keep her from making a sound, hoping that she would escape. So, she can't cry. Just listening to the sound of chewing food outside. The little girl's heart beat rapidly, she couldn't stop crying, and her brain hurt. She covered her ears tightly and closed her eyes. The desire for survival forced her to try her best not to cry and make no sound. Time passed little by little. However, finally, the sound of eating outside stopped. The little girl breathed a sigh of relief. She wiped her tears. Suddenly, she heard footsteps. And the footsteps were getting closer. Hearing this sound, the little girl's face turned pale. She raised her head and looked at the top of the wooden barrel. She saw a big metal hand reaching in from above. The little girl's face was as pale as paper. No. No. Her voice soon disappeared. TNC was angry and looked for those hateful invaders on the street. Suddenly, TNC heard a noise in front of a room. He pushed open the door. What he saw was a creature wearing black armor and eating with a mouthful of blood. Next to this creature were two skeletons, one big and one small. Seeing this scene, TNC's pupils trembled. Death continues in this data civilization. How many situations like women or girls appear and happen in this data civilization? It's just that few people see it and few people discover it. The predation of the Zerg civilization is very terrifying and very cruel. They don't care who the prey is, they just satisfy their appetite. When a predator species invades another species, the result is cruel. And this is the law of nature, and the law of civilization and civilization. Chen Mu watched the scene from the side, and he muttered, "What a pity, if you came earlier, maybe you could save the humans you cherish." Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 422. Through TNC's vision. He can see the life value of the insect-headed humanoid in front of him. What is displayed in front of TNC is a string of numbers. 10 million life value. TNC frowned, it's really tough. However, TNC was not afraid at all. He suddenly jumped and quickly pounced on the humanoid in front of him. With a step, his body instantly approached the humanoid. But within 10 years, through upgrading, my current attack power is 20 million. He clenched his fist and punched the humanoid directly. Boom! Accompanied by a loud bang. TNC's fist smashed the mecha of the humanoid, and at the same time penetrated the exoskeleton armor inside the mecha, and even the body inside the exoskeleton armor exploded. A huge hole was revealed. The insect-headed humanoid slowly fell down. There was no movement. Chen Mu on the side watched this scene. He was not surprised by this scene. Everything in this data civilization is based on data, and all the data is counted by celestial devices. Shield silver, the hardest material in the universe, which is artificially made, will also be counted by celestial devices after arriving here, and its data will be calculated. According to the density of shield silver, it is 10 million life points calculated by celestial devices. Such a high life point can only be destroyed by a 100-level existence. However, human civilization does not have a 100-level existence, only TNC, who exceeds the 100-level existence. In fact, shield silver is not the hardest material known in the universe. Although many civilizations in this universe call shield silver the hardest material in the universe, it is wrong to say that shield silver is the hardest material known in the universe. The most accurate statement should be that it is the hardest material that can be used by highly intelligent life in the known universe. Shield silver is the hardest material that can be used by highly intelligent life. In the universe, there is a natural material that is recognized by everyone as the hardest, but no one can use this material at present. That is, the singularity in the black hole. The higher the density, the harder it is. Obviously, in the universe, no material can be compared with the density of the singularity. Of course, no one in the known civilizations can use this thing. Except, Chen-Mu. Shield silver is the hardest material synthesized by advanced civilizations using technology. But the technology of those civilizations is obviously not as strong as Chen-Mu's. Although the data civilization is currently only in the medieval era, the celestial device created by Chen-Mu controls this data civilization. People change their body density by upgrading their levels. The body density obtained by TNC's current level has already surpassed shield silver. Of course, people in the data civilization cannot understand this kind of technological power. The invasion of the Zerg civilization is bound to fail. Because they are not invading an ordinary medieval civilization, but a civilization dominated by the celestial device created by Chen-Mu. Civilization itself cannot create technology, but behind civilization stands a super technology device created by Chen-Mu to support it. The invasion of the Zerg civilization can indeed make the lives in the data civilization almost extinct, but the Zerg civilization cannot completely destroy these lives. Because among these lives, there is TNC. After TNC appeared, Chen-Mu basically lost interest in this data civilization. Because TNC's existence at this moment is like a bug, just like the main gods at the beginning of the 7 civilizations, an almost invincible existence. After Chen-Mu watched TNC slaughter those Zerg mechas crazily, he retracted his sight and left the data civilization. What should I do next? As a cosmic giant, Chen-Mu slowly opened his eyes and saw the universe pool in front of him. Looking at the universes floating in the universe pool, looking at the superclusters in the universe, and looking at the galaxies through the superclusters. What should I do next? Chen-Mu didn't know. He wanted to kill time, so he tried to create civilizations one after another. He just wanted to observe these lives for fun. But in the end, he still didn't bring himself any happiness. Chen-Mu raised his hand and looked at his hand. This feeling is just like what Chen-Mu said to TNC before. For Chen-Mu, life is just a few clay figures. Making a few clay figures may be interesting at first, but it is only at the beginning. The death, extinction, and destruction of the clay figures cannot cause any ripples in Chen-Mu's heart. Chen-Mu's heart is like dead water, without any emotions. He can't feel anything. No anger, no happiness, no joy, no fear, no uneasiness. Emptiness. The universe is in the void, so I, who have become the consciousness of the infinite universe, can only embrace the sense of emptiness and live. Chen-Mu now very much wants to be himself in the past, to be terrified, uneasy, afraid, and terrified. But Chen-Mu knows that it is impossible to achieve. Chen-Mu slowly closed his eyes. Then he slowly opened his eyes. Go again. Go back to the past of the Z4 timeline and look at the emotions I have left behind. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 423. Shenmue came to the initial point of the Z4 timeline. In other words, the time point when Shenmue was transformed into a sea squirt larva. Of course, the timeline cannot be changed. When Shenmue entered this timeline, the Z4 timeline branched out into another timeline, which was a branch of the Z4 timeline, and could be said to be the Z4-2 timeline. Shenmue looked at the sea squirt larva in the ocean in the form of subconsciousness. That sea squirt larva was another him in this timeline. Shenmue did not influence this other self. He followed Z4-2 and watched him walk the same path American Samoa himself. At the beginning, like himself, the first thought of this Shenmue in front of him after he became a sea squirt larva was to become a human. But obviously this could not be done. Then, Shenmue watched him transform from a sea squirt larva into other species. Along with the changes in species, he gradually became addicted to evolution and no longer experienced the various emotions around him. He regarded evolution as everything, and only wanted to know what abilities he would gain after evolution, and what species he would become after evolution. In addition, he often turned into other creatures, and slowly he could not figure out what he was. Because a person has always been a human, he always looks at everything in the world from a human perspective. When he turns into other animals, he will begin to see everything from the perspective of other animals. When a consciousness body has experienced many animal perspectives and experienced the lives of those animals, that consciousness body will not be able to tell whether it is a human or an animal. Gradually messy, and eventually collapsed. Therefore, among the countless timelines that Shenmue knows, there are many Shenmue in the timeline who have mental breakdowns and eventually die because they can't figure out whether they are human or animal. Some of the Shenmue are more determined in spirit. In the end, they choose to turn back into humans after they get prey to turn into other animals. Stand on the human standpoint again and look at the world. For the Z4 timeline, this is a very special timeline. Because the Shenmue in this timeline is naturally cold. Under the interference of various positions, he did not regard himself as an animal, let alone a human being. Even, he did not think about what he was. Because he had only one idea in his mind at that time, to be precise, a belief, he believed in evolution and longed to know the end of evolution. So, in the process of evolution, he abandoned his emotions and became Shenmue without emotions. Shenmue saw the experience of Shenmue in the Z4-2 timeline in front of him, from becoming a sea squirt larva to becoming a planet. By observing Shenmue in this timeline, Shenmue finally knew how he gradually lost those emotions. This is evolution. Shenmue said to himself. Losing emotions is not a mistake. It is an evolution. In the environment where one can automatically change his position and have the ability to evolve into other creatures. In order to adapt to this environment, Shenmue abandoned his emotions and believed in evolution. And this is an evolution. The most primitive reason for the evolution of organisms is to adapt to the environment. And Shenmue's loss of emotions is the result of his thick adaptation to the environment. Losing emotions is not a mistake, but a choice of oneself, and a choice of evolution. And now Shenmue is the final evolutionary posture. His existence is not meaningless, nor is it nihilistic. It is just to adapt to the environment and obtain a kind of evolution. If he did not abandon his emotions in that environment at that time, he would die of mental breakdown like other Shenmue. If he chose to be a human, he would return to ordinary life like other Shenmue who became human. Shenmue did not have a mental breakdown because he could not recognize whether he was a human or an animal, nor did he stop at ordinary life as a human. He became what he is now, and became this infinite universe. He became an omnipotent existence. In this infinite universe, he is absolutely invincible. There is no absolute in the world, but in this infinite universe, he is absolute. Even the existence that created this world can't do anything to him. The infinite universe has everything, from quantum to the entire infinite universe, all of which are part of him. All of this cannot be destroyed. This is the final end of Chenmu's evolution, the infinite universe, the ultimate form that ignores all dimensions. End of book.